Absolutely. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But now we have another top 8 match, and we're going to cut down to the action with Ben Lundquist and his opponent, whom I believe, let me take a look at my pairings here. There's Ben Lundquist on the left. I believe that his opponent this round is William McDonald.
Yeah, it's. I know that he's playing against Blue-White Heroic this game. We're going to find out who's up a game here as soon as we can, guys. We believe they're shuffling up for game 2.
I think it's Lewis Gall here. Yeah, they're shuffling up for game 2.
Yeah, he is playing against Lewis Gall, the Blue-White Heroic deck, yes.
And do we know who won game 1?
We're finding that out momentarily, guys.
Yep. It shouldn't be too difficult to find out. They're sideboarding for game 2 here. And Ben Lundquist we had on camera in round 1 was playing a blue-black control deck, another one of your picks to win the tournament here. You have the deck list in front of you there. Take a look and tell me a little bit about Ben Lundquist's deck.
All right, so Ben Lundquist's deck doesn't really do anything, right? You know, he has an A-Shock to do something, but other than that, he's trying to 1-for-1 you into the ground. He's going to kill everything you do, counterspell it, draw some cards, wash, rinse, and repeat. He's going to want to continue to make his land drops and just cast big spells. He wants to cast a Dig Through Time, wants to cast a Jace's Ingenuity, and just wants to kill you with a Pearl-like agent.
It's not that it doesn't do anything. It does nothing.
I guess we didn't want artifacts to do anything either this game, too.
Yeah, and he does have a couple of artifacts that really impact the game plans of most of the players that he's up against, which is Perilous Vault, a very powerful card if he's able to activate it against Blue-White Heroic, which his opponent Lewis Gall is playing. The Blue-White Heroic deck of his opponent is Favored Hoplite, Hero of Iroas, Battlewise Hoplite, Heliod's Pilgrim, all 4 ofs, as well as 3 copies of Seeker of the Way. That's the creatures. The spells Ordeal of Thassa and Defiant Strike are the card draw spells, 4 copies of each. 4 God's Willing as well to protect his creatures, 2 Stratus Walk, 1 Aqueous Form, 1 Ordeal of Heliod, 1 Stubborn Denial, 1 Feat of Resistance, and 1 Ajani's Presence, in addition to lands. This is a list popularized by Tom Ross. You can tell by the one-ofs Ajani's Presence as well as Stubborn Denial, which are calling cards of the Tom Ross strategy. And they are going to be going to game 2, I believe, with Ben up a game.
Yes, Ben is up a game here, which is pretty big because Ben was on the draw, so he's able to break serve here, meaning that he's going to get to go first in game 3 if they have a game 3. Ben is looking to have all of his early interaction here as quickly as possible, and then to get a just to get a positive footing in the match. He wants a turn where no creature comes into play, nothing's attacking him. He gets to draw some cards, just, you know, do his own thing.
He needs a turn to breathe.
Right. He needs a turn to breathe, to get a Perilous Vault in play, and just once that's up, his shields are up. It's really, really hard for Lewis to win if he doesn't kill him if there's a Perilous Vault in play.
If Ben gets to untap comfortably, if Ben gets to untap without facing a powerful creature, on any one turn, things are going to turn drastically in his favor very quickly, and it's going to be very tough for Lewis to turn the tide back if it gets turned.
Yeah, we saw it earlier in the match between David Williams and John Kohler, where John drew 1 or 2 spells out of order. You know, he drew his protection spell the turn after his creature died and just had to pass the turn. If the Blue-White Heroic deck passes the turn without doing anything, and as you said, gives a breather to Ben, he's going to take it and leverage it to a win.
So we have one result already for you, and that is Eric Froelich defeating Andrew Batinich. The other matches we have are Eric Froelich will be playing the winner of either Dave Williams and Jake Hill. That is a Abzan Whip deck versus Green-Black matchup. On the other side of the bracket, we have Ben Lundquist in the match that you're currently seeing up against Lewis Gall's Blue-White Heroic with his Blue-Black control. And the 1 seed, Shane Merrill, with Jeskai Tokens, taking on the 8 seed, who snuck into the top 8, William McDonald. We are ready to go, and our players are as well, so we're going to be cutting back to the action here at CardMageddon. Blue-White Heroic down a game, but on the play against Blue-Black control from Benny Beatdowns. So can he survive the beatdowns is the question.
Right. I love that we keep calling him Benny Beatdowns this weekend when I've seen him attack a total of like 2 times the entire weekend. So he did have a cool thing happen in a game earlier. He had an A-Shock in play and put in a Savage Knuckleblade from his opponent, gave it haste with his Temple of Malice, and then pumped it with his Opulent Palace.
Wow.
So
That's impressive.
Yeah.
You'll notice that if you take a look at the deck lists that we have for our top 8 players, Ben Lundquist has 1 copy of Opulent Palace as well as 1 copy of Temple of Malice. So those are the one-offs. We have a result for you. Shane Merrill, the number 1 overall seed, defeats William McDonald. Jeskai Tokens moves on to the semifinals. Abzan Midrange in the hands of William McDonald falls. David Williams is up 1 game over Jake Hill. He is the 2 seed and moves 1 step closer to the Vintage Super League rematch and poker player aficionado pairing.
There'll be a lot of bragging rights going on.
Oh, absolutely. I think that those 2 players are going to be jawing back and forth. That's another one that I'd like to see with commentary if we had a mic over the table.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall of the feature match area. Lewis Gall is going to begin things with Lagana Band Trailblazer. That is an 0-4 with Heroic, that when it is targeted, it gets a +1/+1 counter. Ben Lundquist began with Temple of Malice.
The old creature that can't be bio-blighted. The old 1-drop that cannot die to a -3/-3 effect.
Yep. Lagana Band Trailblazer is a 2 of in his sideboard, and it's just another way to get a creature into play. He needs to up his creature count because of how many ways Ben has to answer things. As we see a Thoughtseize from Ben Lundquist after an island, we see Seeker of the Way, Defiant Strike, God's Willing, Mana Confluence, and Heliod's Pilgrim. So you're Ben Lundquist, and you have this Despise, and your targets are going to be either Seeker of the Way or Heliod's Pilgrim. Which one are you most likely to take?
I'm probably going to take Heliod's Pilgrim here. It's got the most upside of the 2 creatures. We have a lot of ways to kill a Seeker of the Way, but Heliod's Pilgrim represents a problem in that on a turn that he wants to, when he really feels he can, Lewis Gall is going to go get specific aura that he wants, usually to draw extra cards. He takes the Seeker of the Way. I guess it's going to be for curve purposes in the game. I obviously think that's fine. I need to know Ben's exact hand to get correct here. It depends on what answers he has, to go along with what's going on. But knowing that God's Willing is there is actually a big deal for Ben here too.
Lewis Gall top decks a 2-mana creature in the form of Hero of Iroas, so it actually throws off Ben's game plan a little bit. I think he was hoping to force Lewis to play the Heliod's Pilgrim this turn to be able to try to kill off the 0-4, but instead Lewis, I think, is going to be able to play a 2-mana creature, leaving up the God's Willing once again. Now, he's not going to be taking any damage this turn because the Lagana Band Trailblazer is an 0-4. Lewis can attack if he wants to, trigger Raid. Not that Lewis has any Raid in his deck.
So the Trailblazer is an odd card here. The fact that it doesn't have power means that it can't attack Ben until he starts to put things onto it, and then he has to start to play into effects by putting things onto it. Like by trying to create a Voltron. Yes, it doesn't die to Bioblight, but by the time you're getting going with it, Hero's Downfall is actually now a card.
Lewis has decided that he wants the train to start going, so he's actually going to just play the Defiant Strike, trigger Heroic, and attack for 2, also drawing a card. So this Hero of Iroas is open to a little bit of a kill spell, but Lewis decided that he needs to get going.
All right. I like this play by Lewis. You need to pressure Ben at some point in time. If you wait the entire game, it doesn't matter if you have a God's Willing, he's going to play a Perilous Vault at some point in time. You need to beat him down in some way, shape, or form. And the God's Willing is not going to win you the game over the next turn. So I actually really like this play line from Lewis Gall. Yeah,
Ben is only going to have 3 mana this turn. He's not going to be able to kill both creatures. So even if he knocks off one of the 2 creatures this turn with something like a Hero's Downfall, which looks like we're going to get a Bile Blight instead to knock off the Hero of Iroas, at least Lewis still has a 1/5 that has Heroic, so he can start adding more things to his board. He also still has that Heliod's Pilgrim, as we mentioned earlier, from the Thoughtseize. But first, Temple of Enlightenment, going to scry to the bottom, and attacking for 1. A little bit odd, by the way, I think, that you would play the scry land first if your plan was to play the Heliod's Pilgrim. So I think that Lewis tipped his hand a little bit, by the way, of playing the Temple of Enlightenment pre-combat. By playing the Temple of Enlightenment and getting the value off the scry pre-combat, he sort of told Ben that he's not going to play the Heliod's Pilgrim this turn.
Yeah, absolutely, I can agree more. What's going to happen here is Lewis is going to start to leave up God's Willing now, since Hero's Downfall is now a card. As I said, it was fine for him not to do that one turn. We have 2 threats in play. You make Ben make the decision, but there are less answers for the Trailblazer in his deck than there are for the 2/2, and here's the card of the matchup, like we talked about.
Yep, it's very difficult for Lewis Gall to deal with a Perilous Vault. In his sideboard, Lewis has 2 copies of Erase and 1 copy of Mortal Obstinacy, which I think is one of my favorite cards from this weekend.
Now, does it kill an artifact, or is it only enchantments?
Only enchantments. There
Okay.
is another card from the same set that is red, that costs 1 mana, that gives +1/+1, that when it deals damage to an opponent, you can sacrifice the enchantment to destroy target artifact.
Yeah, that was a little harder to cast in this blue-white deck,
Yeah,
though.
can't really cast that one in blue-white heroic, and so
We have mana confluence, but I mean, come on.
we don't have a ton of ways to answer this perilous vault, and I think that Lewis
You have to be pretty crazy to do that. You have to be a man named Tom Ross to
Yeah.
pull off something like
to
that.
pull off something like that. In comes 1 damage from Lewis Gall. And here comes Heliod's Pilgrim, I think. Searching out an aura. Now you're Lewis. You have an aura named Ordeal of Heliod. You have an aura named Aqueous Form. You have a Stratus Walk. What do you go get here?
Well, you're almost always going to go get the Ordeal of Thassa, because I expect most of the other targets aren't in his deck anymore.
Sure.
And just drawing extra cards in this matchup is what he wants to do. The fact that he can almost keep up the early turns, the amount of cards that Ben has with card selection and card quantity, is a huge thing for his deck, because Ben's just trying to 1-for-1 him out of this game. And he has to protect his creatures. He has a limited number of them. He doesn't always draw all of them. You actually don't want to draw too many.
Land number 5, by the way, is a Dismal Backwater for Ben Lundquist, which, on the plus side, gains him a life, but on the downside is not an untapped source of mana.
You see, it's actually fine here, because Benny is not in trouble of dying the next turn, and he gets to play this weird game of Lewis, where,
Where it
he's
looks
going to
like
make him use his God's Willing this turn, so he's going to make him use multiple cards. Because we want the God's Willing out of his hand, so we're going to make him have to actually do it now, before we blow the Perilous Vault.
Yep, and so Ordeal of Thassa is going to resolve. And in come the 2 creatures, dealing 6 damage to Ben Lundquist. Looks like Ben's going to go down to 9 with Lewis at 18, and Lewis is going to get to draw 2 cards.
I think the sequencing was fine. We, even if I had an untapped land, I might still play the Dismal Backwater there.
Ben Lundquist deciding how he wants to proceed. Separating 2 mana away from 3. What does that signal to you if you're playing against Ben Lundquist?
Well, you usually should look at the colors of the lands that he separates, but usually it means dissolve plus something, and he's just looking at his lands. This is something I became conscious of myself when I played a lot of blue-white last year, that I would actually just separate my lands and just tip my hand, when you should try to just do the same thing at all times. Now, I really like this take of the damage by Ben Lundquist here, because he's going to essentially time walk his opponent.
Ben is going to fall to 3 here, and Perilous Vault is going to get activated, and in response, the one-of sideboard Dig Through Time, Lewis Gall is going to add 2 more cards to his hand.
I actually like this card a lot in this matchup. It's going to go long, it's going to go super grindy, and he's going to get 2 creatures off this most likely, which is what he needs. Or it's going to find him a specific card he needs to win the game in a tight spot, but here he's most likely just going to slam 2 creatures just to keep the game going.
Looks like one of the cards he's considering is the Stubborn Denial.
That one's going to be a little harder to make good over the next couple turns, but it depends on what are the other 2 cards. It looks like he's taking Stubborn Denial, and I couldn't see what the second card was. It was moving a little too
I
fast.
would imagine it's a creature. Dig Through Time does resolve, and both of the creatures that Lewis had in play are gone. So Ben Lundquist gets to untap. He is only at 3, but there's not a ton of burn in Blue-White Heroic.
Yeah, Blue-White Heroic doesn't have a ton of reach. It's going to kill you of what you see in play. There's no haste creatures, nothing like that.
And Ben Lundquist now has a Despise to be able to take out anything
yeah,
Lewis...
This is pretty big in this spot if Lewis only has the 1 creature, but okay, he did get the second one in the Favored Hoplite.
So we got Favored Hoplite, Battle-Wise Hoplite, Stubborn Denial, and Feat of Resistance. So not only do we have 2 creatures, we also have a protection spell and a counter spell. Although the counter spell is not going to be very good just yet, because we aren't quite ferocious enough to make it full value. It is just in Force Spike mode right now. Only able to counter non-creatures. Ben deciding how he wants to proceed here. Despise is able to is a 1 black mana sorcery. Choose a creature or planeswalker from your opponent's hand, and that player discards it, and he elects to choose Battle-Wise Hoplite instead of Favored Hoplite, and he finds himself a second Perilous Vault.
I was going to say, what Benny really needs here is a second Perilous Vault to be able to just play it, say go, and just buy himself that buffer for the next couple turns.
Now, here's an interesting thing. Lewis found himself a Johnny's Presence off the top.
Yeah, I saw that top deck too, and it's really funny because it actually doesn't save you from Perilous Vault.
Yeah, it exiles the creatures, right?
Right. It exiles all the permanents, the non-land permanents that are in play. Now, when Lewis attacks his turn, Benny's going to be like, yeah, bring it. Come on, I'll take 1. He's going to dare him to pump his guy. Because 2 and 3 are no different, and 2 and 1 is no different in this matchup.
So in comes the favorite hoplite. Ben says, yep, all right, I'll take 2, or I'll take 1, I'll go to 2. Now, if you're Ben Lundquist, do you just pass the turn, or you're like, all right, it's my turn?
If he has any kind of draw card spell, he's going to do it here, otherwise he's going to Perilous Vault.
Oh, yeah. He does Perilous
He needs to be able to cast 2 spells in a turn. Coming up to make this, he doesn't want to get Stubborn Denialed. He wants to make sure that all of his mana is available for him for the rest of the game.
Ben Lundquist with 3 cards in hand. At 2 life, but with Lewis Gall having no creatures in play, and as we know, no creatures in hand either.
Benny really needs to cast a Dig Through time soon.
Yeah, the onus is on Lewis. I mean, the longer the game goes, the more likely it is that Ben's going to win, because he's got Jace's Ingenuity, he's got Dig Through Times in his deck, he's got more Scry. Lewis needs very specific cards to be able to try to win this game, whereas Ben is going to have a lot more options. And there's a Treasure Cruise. Lewis Gall finding the one of the most powerful commons printed in the last several years.
That was a pretty good top deck there. In some ways, it's actually better than a creature if he draws multiple creatures off this. As we know, he needs a threat, but he needs a threat when he can leave up mana for it. And he found a 1-drop, which is huge, because he has a Feat of Resistance in his hand. So that's huge from this turn. Benny was hoping that he could get through, the turn, like we said, with no creature, just go from the blue-white deck. So he could have a moment to, to think, a moment to breathe for himself.
Lewis did, in fact, find the second creature in Battlewise Hoplite, but guess what? Ben Lundquist also has a creature that gets bigger when he casts spells, named Pearl Lake Ancient. That's a big one. Sitting in play. Not very easy to get past, I wouldn't think.
Now, what's probably going to happen is Ben's going to be able to block here. He's going to have to cast Feat of Resistance, naming blue to get through. And if Ben has any kind of response with a removal spell, he just gets blown out 2 for 1, which might actually be too much for him to overcome. But this thing is going to be just a giant roadblock here, too.
And so Ashok, Nightmare Weaver, entering the battlefield, getting a couple of creatures underneath as well.
Ashok is actually insane here in the fact that he can start making creatures every single turn that are different colored than his Pearl Lake Ancient, so it's not like he can get God's Willing out of the game.
If he's able to survive this turn, which is certainly no guarantee, as Lewis Gall has played Ordeal of Thassa, targeting his favorite hoplite, which represents lethal even by itself.
It's very possible that he's actually just dead this turn with the Feat of Resistance and the Johnny's Presence in his hand. In fact, I think he actually is just dead.
We'll see what Ben Lundquist is able to pull out of his hat here. Ordeal of Thassa resolves.
I think what he has to do is try to block, and anytime he gets him Probe Blue, is kill it in response, but
well, he also has a copy. He has God's Willing in addition to Feat of Resistance, in addition to a Johnny's Presence. A ton of ways to protect his creature and also make it unblockable, and that means we're going to be headed to a Game 3 between Lewis Gall and Ben Lundquist. 1-1. Blue-Black Control going to be on the play for the final game here of the quarterfinals of CardMageddon, presented by CardAgain.com. Visit CardAgain.com for deck building and also a card marketplace. Visit CardAgain.com also for articles and video content from Travis Wu, Trey Van Cleve, and more. So, CardAgain, nice enough to bring us in and do commentary for CardMageddon here in Vegas. Reuben Bresler alongside Tannon Grace with Michelle Roberson, a.k.a. Esper of the Fragdolls, off to the side here, awaiting a winner's interview here to see who the winner of the first ever CardMageddon tournament is, who gets to take home the $5,000 first prize, and also, more importantly, who gets to take home Winnie the trophy. This is, I know we've been making a lot of jokes about this, but this is just the coolest trophy.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I'm not gonna lie. I got to see it before most people, and I was quite excited.
Yeah, it's great.
Right.
It's high-fiving you for winning. It's so good. Some of the other cool promotions that we had today. All Day 2 players who played today, and we had 49 of them playing on Day 2. Get this awesome RK Post playmat. Magic Artist Extraordinaire RK Post was nice enough to draw up this Day 2 playmat. It's a very nice thing, and also I get to get one of these too. Do you get one? I think you get one.
I think we do. We're staff.
Also, we are staff. That's a good point. I think we do get one. And also, if you pre-registered for this event using either the keyword Tannon, the keyword Michelle, the keyword Ifro, I believe, the keyword Reuben, get one of these with the CardMageddon Deep Impact logo.
Right.
So
Morgan Freeman.
A lot of really good promos that were given out at this event, and I couldn't have been happier to work with all the folks here. Our director Brian, by the way, give just a quick shout out while everyone's working before we go to the winners interview and we do the normal credits.
Right.
Has been great all weekend. Brian didn't really know anything about Magic before the weekend. I gave him about a half-hour speech trying to explain all the things, but what he lacks in knowledge on Magic, he makes up for knowledge on the camera work and on the stream. So I'm super excited with all the team. Gavin Duggan, the head judge, and all the judge staff have been great all weekend. I just couldn't be happier with how the event worked for us.
He's definitely a stream scientist. He's made us look a lot better than we should.
Absolutely. Well, than you should.
Oh, come on now.
I look good all the time.
It's the beard. But honestly, though, I couldn't have thought of a better partner to do this with this weekend. Thank you very much, Reuben. Aw, thank you.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate that.
I've had an amazing time. Look forward to doing this again with you anytime soon.
Sure.
If we get another chance at this, I'd be ecstatic.
I'm free. We're going to cut back to the match so that we can make out real quick. But, so here we got Lewis Gall and Ben Lundquist shuffling up for Game 3. They're tied 1-1. Blue-Black Control against Blue-White Heroic. These are the 4th and 5th ranked players of our Day 2 tournament here, by the way. I believe both of these players were 4-1-1. Mm-hmm. Does that sound familiar?
That sounds great. Great. That sounds exactly right, yes.
Okay.
All right, so what Biddy's looking for to win here is an early Despise or Thoughtseize, either early Despise taking out the only creature in the Blue-White Heroic's hand, or an early Thoughtseize taking out the only protection spell, like the only God's Willing, the only feeder resistance, so his removal spells are clean to go through, and then just early interactions.
So it looks like the players are looking at their opening hands, deciding if this is how they want to proceed.
Benny's going to start the game off with a Dismal Backwater, putting himself at 21.
Already winning.
Mm-hmm. If you really want to think about it that way.
Yeah, of course. Lewis Gall is beginning with a tap land of his own in Temple of Enlightenment. One of your favorite lands of all time.
All time. One of my
Slightly
favorite
different deck than you're used to playing.
Oh, of course. Now, I think this is going to be a really good Thoughtseize. Yeah, it's going to be a great Thoughteize out of many beatdowns here. Lewis has a few lands.
He has 3 lands, Island Plains, as well as Battle-Wise Hoplite, Hero of Iroas, Stubborn Denial, and God's Willing. Only one targeted spell in Lewis Gall's hand.
Yeah, the God's Willing, depending on Ben's hand, but the God's Willing is most likely going to be the target here. He could play around Stubborn Denial knowing it's there for the rest of the game. And then, we should have enough removal spells to one-for-one, our way through these 2 creatures.
What Ben picks here can oftentimes tell us the contents of Ben's hand.
Yeah, it's going to be very telling about the contents of Ben's hand on what he takes here. And he's actually taking a minute to really consider this, which means to believe it's not clear-cut as we think.
Yeah, but he is going to end up taking the God's Willing, as we thought. It is one of the most powerful effects that Lewis has in his deck. Not only does it counter an elimination spell, it also can sometimes make creatures unblockable. It also scries, it slices, it dices, it julienne fries.
Right. And this is the start that we talked about. This is the start that I spoke about right before the game started. This is exactly what Ben wants to do in the beginning of the game. If he has a removal spell here for this creature, I don't think he could be happier with the start of the way the game's going.
So we're going to see a swamp that opens up Hero's Downfall, potentially.
Opens up A-Shock, too.
Opens up A-Shock, but it looks like we're just going to pass. Which I don't mind, especially considering the fact that we already took 1 God's Willing, and over half of Lewis's hand is already known to us. So he's just going to get in for 2 here.
Yeah, and if he has a counterspell, it's actually a really good pass, because if he plays a second creature, we can counterspell, untap, kill the creature we have now, and as far as we know, there are no more left in
So Lewis is simply going to play a Temple of Enlightenment, and I think he signaled to pass right back to Ben Lundquist.
Leave up the Stubborn Denial to play around Hero's Downfall here.
Now, Ben can play a 4th land untapped and potentially play a Hero's Downfall of his own, but he's electing not to. This is a game that shows you exactly what the False Tempo archetype is all about. Mm-hmm. The threat of God's Willing has time-walked Ben twice. Let's assume he has a Hero's Downfall. Right?
Well, he knew that he had Stubborn Denial, so he wasn't going to play it. He only has 3 mana. Also, I think Ben is fine with the pace of this game is going. It's also possible Ben might be flooding, too.
That's also possible. We don't know the contents of Ben's hand, as Lewis Gall is going to play Heliod's Pilgrim, a card that did not get a ton of love in Standard until very recently in Blue-White Heroic, as well as the Sam Black Red-White Tokens deck.
Well, it's basically Stoneforge Mystic.
It's basically Stoneforge Mystic. It has a lot of similarities. It is a 1/2 creature. It has a white color identity, and it searches your library. And that is where the similarities end.
It's just strictly better than Squire.
Stoneforge Mystic is one of the best core artificers ever printed. One of the top 3, I would say, at least.
For sure.
I don't have the full list in front of me, but I can safely say that it's one of the top 3 core artificers. It's very similar to Savage Knuckleblade being one of the top 3 ogre warriors of all time.
You know way too many creature types.
I know just enough creature types. My engineered plague skill knows no bounds.
Okay. So Ben had a Bile-Blight there at the end of the turn to kill Lewis's real threat. You know, this Heliod's Pilgrim can definitely attack, but it's definitely not as good as the other guys in the deck, because not having the heroic ability makes some of these cards in Lewis's deck not as good.
Absolutely. So Lewis is going to untap with a creature, but it is a lowly 1/2, and so Lewis is going to decide that he's going to play out Hero of Iroas first. That makes all of his auras 1 cheaper, including Ordeal of Thassa. And so he is going to elect to simply swing into the red zone with 1 power worth of creature. Heliod's Pilgrim brings Ben down to 15, and I think that that's actually Ben is getting some pressure put on him. He's had a little bit of trouble, like, keeping Lewis under control, letting all these spells resolve, but I think he's pretty okay with how this game is paced out thus far. And also, we have Drown in Sorrow here. In response to Drown in Sorrow, it looks like Defiant Strike targeting Hero of Iroas.
Yeah, this is to make his hero a 4-power creature, so that he can Stubborn Denial this Drown in Sorrow.
It's also going to trigger the Hero of Iroas and make it a 3/3, so Ben might be able to, if he wants to try to Bile-Blight here, then the Stubborn Denial just counters either of the spells.
Yeah, this is a really tough spot for Ben. This is a great sequence by Lewis.
Yep. Looks like he's just going to allow the Defiant Strike to resolve, and Drown in Sorrow.
Oh yeah, that's right. He doesn't even have to Stubborn Denial here. What was that? Yeah.
Yeah.
He can just let his Pilgrim die, and that's completely fine.
So Hero of Iroas is a base 2/2 with a +1/+1 counter that has -2/-2 currently from Drown in Sorrow, so it is a 1/1 until the end of the turn. Ben Lundquist could find himself land number 6 if he had it in his hand. And until end of turn, the creature is actually a 2/1 because of Defiant Strike.
Correct.
Ben's in a little bit of a tough spot, but he's not facing lethal. He is going to have to deal with a Ordeal of Thassa, though, that is going to be able to go down on this Hero of Iroas relatively soon.
It'll immediately draw Lewis 2 cards and put him firmly in the driver's seat for sure.
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot harder for Ben to win if he gets a huge hero in play and is able to find a protection spell. At that point in time, the game is probably out of reach.
Yeah. Ben, without finding an early Perilous Vault to be able to remove things without having to target them, and also the Drown in Sorrow unable to take the hero down without getting a heroic trigger, means that a lot of his answers have not been the correct ones just yet. And so in response to a Bile-Blight, there's going to be a Stubborn Denial. The Bile-Blight was in response to an Ordeal of Thassa that triggered. Lewis is going to get 2 more cards, one of which is a favored Hoplite on top. The other one was a Flooded Strand. Looks like favored Hoplite is going to hit the board.
Right, he's probably assuming that his hero is not going to live since he doesn't have a protection spell from it, and he wants to be able to rebuild from here.
Hero of Iroas is a 5/5 currently. I believe that Ben is at 10 life.
Yeah, that's correct.
And there is Perilous Vault.
This is a little bit late. I mean, it's kind of scary. There is a couple draws that can actually kill Ben from here, but if he gets to untap with this Perilous Vault, there is a chance that he wins. Now, Lewis is moving very quickly, which leads me to believe that this game might actually just be over.
I did see a God's Willing. If we have another copy of Ordeal of Thassa, that's 3 heroic triggers. With the 6 power we have in play, that's 9. So we would only need 1 more power to be able to try to finish this one off. Oh, we have a Johnny's Presence with Strive, making some indestructible creatures and also triggering heroic on both of them. And so a Johnny's Presence with Strive of 2 colorless and a white on the regularly just white mana spell gives +2/+2 to both creatures. That is more than enough to finish off Ben Lundquist, and pretty much out of nowhere. Well, out of somewhere. We had a little bit of an inkling that that could happen, but Johnny's Presence showing its worth there. basically overrun, better than overrun. And finishing off, Ben Lundquist. Both of our picks to win the tournament have now fallen by the wayside, as Louis Gall is going to move on to the semifinals.
Yeah, you had to know that it was probably over there when, you know, he was really, really excited, drew his card very fast, and just went through the motions as quickly as possible to kill his opponent. Generally, it's the worst feeling in Magic when you tap out in some way and your opponent's like, well, what are you at? Yeah, it's the worst question ever to hear, or just confirming stuff, but yeah, it's a rough day to lose in the first round of a top 8, especially for our earlier match, being undefeated all day long, getting your first loss in top 8 to be eliminated. Many beatdowns. My pick to win the tournament here is going down, so I'm a little sad, but I mean, we've got some great players left in this.
Absolutely.
Louis Gall played great in that match.
Did.
He sequenced his
and
spells
Ben
well.
is being consoled by his Soulforge and Ascension Design co-workers over there from Stoneblade Entertainment. You can see Justin Gary and John Fiorello supporting him from the rail over there. A good finish from Ben Lundquist, and nothing to be ashamed of, but looks like Shane Merrill will be facing off against Louis Gall in the semifinals. And so there's Louis packing up and getting ready for his next round. It'll be blue-white-red tokens against blue-white heroic on the top half of the bracket. The bottom half of the bracket is going to be Eric Froelich